Hey everybody, thank you all for coming. My name is Jeremy. I'm the founder and CEO of Virtual Arcade. And today we'll sort of talk about our startup journey and how we got here over the past 4 years. Again, feel free to ask questions anytime you'd like. I'll see if I could put in a few sort of Q&A times in between each of the topics as well. But basically, we're going to be talking about our 4-year startup journey and how we got started. The first thing I want to do is, well, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I actually worked at Microsoft as a program manager. And so I'm happy to talk more about product management, program management, any questions that you may have, Dax. And I graduated from Georgia Tech, went into Microsoft, worked on Xbox One, shipped Xbox One, the third Xbox, and then moved on to the Microsoft HoloLens, which I understand that a few of the 42 folks that we met with have been working on HoloLens projects with the Microsoft Reactor in San Francisco. We worked on that, and then once they announced that they were shipping and it was sort of official that the project was going to be released and go out, I left Microsoft and did a cross-country road trip. At the time, while I was still in Georgia Tech, I had came up with this. I'd always wanted to start a startup, but I also was fascinated by the technical elements of it. Although I wasn't as good at it, I liked to approach it from a sort of a program management and uh, get very smart people together to make this amazing technology happen type of person. And so when I was at Georgia Tech, sort of as a trial run or to just sort of get the feel of what it's like to invent something or come up with an idea or come up with a product, I came up with this thing called Robo Bear. And Justin, when you're ready, you can go ahead and play maybe like 20 seconds of that. Um, it's teaching. It's a startup that's about teaching elementary school students college level robotics with robotic teddy bears. When I was in school still, we took this around to different elementary schools, and we got really, really good feedback from it. Originally, it had been just about teaching ourselves how to do robotics using basic Arduino microcontrollers and other microcontrollers. There we go. So I'm going to talk over this video. From there, you'll see fourth graders, first graders, second graders, fifth graders. This video was taken when I was still at Microsoft, and I basically was preparing to leave and do my own startup, and I was running classes, paid classes. I think they were like 120 bucks a class. The students come, they learn everything from the hardware, the Arduino, the wiring, how electricity works, to the software, Arduino programming the teddy bear to hug, to walk, and learning like the battery and power and like everything end to end. Um, this was something that was very near and dear to my heart. I was very passionate about education, very passionate about bringing educational opportunities that seem to be really far away, like in college, that even we couldn't learn at Georgia Tech. We couldn't learn robotics. We didn't have a robotics class, and bringing that down to a first grader, because literally even a first grader can learn this if given the opportunity. So that was the goal of the startup. And once I left Microsoft, I took a cross-country road trip around the country, called up a bunch of elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, made a couple different stops, and just held classes around the country to do this. And it made a good amount of revenue. There's a good market for it. Parents care about quality education for their kids, and quality education isn't available everywhere around the country. So this was I considered a successful business model. We charged for classes, and um, we would go into a school, do an assembly, sort of like present and just do something fun for the kids. Talk about technology. We showed them, the HoloLens and Connect, Xbox Connect, and then showed them RoboBear. And at the end, we were like, oh, who would like to, learn how to make RoboBear? You could do it too. Sign up for the class this Saturday. So that's sort of how that got started. And that was my first startup business. And sort of what got me, a foot in the door. And the sort of recurring theme of our startup journey is that uh, people is everything. Networking and people is everything. People make things happen. Um, and Justin, we could stop that whenever you're ready. Um, when I was in middle school, I had fallen in love with technology and what you could do with it, holograms and virtual reality, even before those were existed in real life. And I'd always wanted to start my own startup. I was actually, funny enough, inspired by this anime called Yu-Gi-Oh! And it's this, yeah. That inspired me to go into engineering, into technology, and into entrepreneurship. And I promise this will come back later, full circle, at the end of the talk. So that's sort of what led me into HoloLens project at Microsoft. That's what led me into VR. So while I was working on RoboBear, I was used this to pay the rent while I was here in Silicon Valley, and I started to transition to the VR, our VR startup idea. And going back to the point about people being everything, since middle school, I had personally, knowing that I wanted to start a startup, sort of been talking my friends' ears off for years and years about, being on a team and working on something and building something together. So, when I left Microsoft and started this, and then started the idea of, okay, let's work in VR. Let's make like VR games or VR experiences, or open a VR arcade or theme park. I called up all my middle school friends and high school friends and college friends, and people that I met through RoboBear, and that's how we got our first team. Justin, somewhere, he left, but Justin and Patrick, the help desk person up there, those were friends from middle school and high school. Um, and we had a friend who currently works at Google, but helped us make our website, our first website, and our first logo. He met him through working on this, on the RoboBear project at Georgia Tech. And then while I was working on RoboBear in Silicon Valley, I did a class for a school here in the Bay Area, and we held a class, and some of the parents volunteered to help out. And one of the volunteer parents, we did the class. She loved it. Her name was Nanette, and I said, "Hey, would you be interested in helping us out more with RoboBear?" And she said yes. So she became the COO of RoboBear, and worked with us to hold more classes. And now she's the COO of Virtual World Arcade. So sort of I did want to highlight that entrepreneurial part of the story where people is everything. People make things happen. And then when we started Virtual World Arcade, um, we had sort of the immediate folks on the team sort of reach out and say, who else can help us out? And Justin at the time knew Fanny, who had worked together on multiple hackathons, multiple projects together, and then we got Fanny on board. And I'd like to show you our first, if Justin's still here, I want to show you our first VR arcade opening and games that we made. We basically came into this, having no idea what we were doing. That's wrong video, Justin. SCP, please. And we had no idea what we were doing, but we knew we wanted to do something in VR. We wanted to make an amazing VR experience. And so we came together as a team. A bunch of us worked remotely at first on this VR Jurassic Island game. And then we were like, hey, we have no idea what we're doing, but we know there's a bunch of other companies around the world who are doing this. Let's hold a conference, bring everybody together, sort of use that as a deadline, a forcing function for us to get this game done. That conference allowed us to meet you see those red lights and those Samsung gears? Allowed us to meet all the hardware partners that allowed us to make this VR arcade concept possible. Allowed us to meet this location, Santa Clara Paintball NorCal Laser Tag in San Jose. They came to our conference and we started talking. And then later that year, we opened our first VR arcade with 2 games at Santa Clara Paintball. And that's sort of how that got started. And so, from the very beginning, conferences and people have been an especially crucial part of us being able to actually, make things happen. Um, and yeah, and then after that, after the conference, everybody sort of started to fly in. Patrick flew in, Justin flew in, Fanny flew in. We got a dev house, a little townhouse in San Jose, and worked out of our garage for a little while and recruited more people. More people came and went, and that's sort of how this all started. And so our passion at the very beginning was, let's create a place where people, me and my friends and I can just walk down the street and play VR arcade games. This is somebody that everybody should be able to experience that people are not going to have at home for a very long time because it's so expensive and so hard to set up. And people don't have the space and will never have enough space to experience truly a free roam or arena scale or warehouse scale multiplayer wireless type of experiences. And you'll sort of see that, from the very beginning, we've been focusing on multiplayer, 4 players, and walk around your wireless. That was really very core to what we wanted to do, the experience we wanted to deliver. And that led us to sort of our sort of breakthrough game in the VR arcade space, which is originally called Prison Break, but it's called Robo Cats, and we'll put on a video of that next now. Um, uh, so basically, by our VR Arcade Conference 2017, I think the second one, yeah, we came out with the first prototype of this game, and we've been running it at every conference after this. It's a 4-player, robotic cat block punching obstacle course game where you have to work together as a team, communicate. You have to have leadership skills, communication skills, teamwork skills. And this became our most popular game at birthday parties, at corporate events, at our own VR arcade that we opened up at Eastridge Mall in 2017. And a lot of our partners also wanted to license this game and run this game as well. And it was a really fun game. Like, I can honestly say that even today I have a lot of fun playing it. And today we have it running on quests now. And so that allowed us to open our own VR arcade, run it for a year. Now, not all stories, are just success and success. In fact, there's a lot of failures that happen along the way that allow us to learn throughout that experience. One huge thing that we learned in this VR arcade journey is that we don't want to run a VR arcade. We don't want to operate a VR arcade. We don't want to, be at a mall 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, handling cash and taking tickets and selling people on an experience, and then putting backpacks on VR backpacks on people, and then um, and all that customer service stuff. Our core team, at least, we ended up finding people who excelled at that, who excelled at sales and marketing and customer service, and that's how we got our technician team. And then, but even then, we realized, wow, the rent in California is really high. No duh. Um, and we realized as we got that business up, and we got huge lines over the weekends, and we couldn't scale because I'm not a retail business guy. We couldn't scale to run that many people with the headsets that we had, but we did find out that we made a lot of money on the birthday parties and the corporate events where we go to somebody's house or we go to somebody's office and service them. And we kept all that money because we didn't have to, there wasn't rent there. So then we thought to ourselves, okay, well, instead of paying rent and having to pay for 7 days a week labor and 8 hours a day, we'll just get out of the mall and we'll just do birthday parties and corporate events. And that's what we've found out and learned through that experience. And we're still doing that today. So today, well, not exactly today because of the pandemic, but today we take our Oculus Quests out. Very easy to carry, take out. And we run like Robo Cats and our other games. And we service the birthday parties and corporate events. And it's super easy. It's a few hours, and we charge $500 per hour. That ended up being sort of what we learned through that VR arcade journey. And we continue to make games. Around the same time, we also started looking into, okay, how do we make games? We've tried the VR arcade space. We've sort of seen how big of a struggle it is for even the operator, to make money, to open a VR arcade and run a VR arcade successfully. It really becomes like a retail or arcade or entertainment, location type of business. So where else can we also, as a developer, look for revenue streams? And the contract that we have with one of our partners today, they do CPR training, fire safety, earthquake, evacuation, active shooter, and several other sort of corporate employee training programs. Um, And what happened was they came to us and they said, "Hey, we have this existing business that makes millions of dollars, and we fly people out, professionals out, to hold training classes, certification training classes, serious classes." So they came to us and said, "Okay, how can we had some ideas on how to scale this, and maybe VR is one of them." So we started talking about, okay, how can we apply VR as a tool to scale their business? And so what ended up happening is we developed first a VR CPR certification training program in VR. So all you have to do is send out a headset. You don't have to send out your 20-year veteran firefighter or trained professional out to teach these classes, but you could just send out someone who knows how to operate the VR headsets and run a class using the VR headsets. Um, and so this actually turned out to work really well. It helped scale their existing business. It was the same content. And through some tests and data gathering that they did, it turns out that the learning and education in VR is much more effective in VR than in real life. And they believe that it was due to a few of these reasons. Um, when you have the headset on versus when you're sitting in a classroom, right? You don't have any distractions. It's basically a one-on-one educational experience. So, removing distractions is a huge part of enhancing the content that you gain and learn. And then one-on-one question, Q&A, one-on-one quizzes. And another big piece is moving at your own pace. Everybody in the class moves through the VR curriculum at their own pace. If they need to repeat something, they can. If they need to revisit a topic, they can. So it's very personalized to what they need educationally. So I think because of those things, it gave them, I think it was a 95% retention rate when they came back, when they had the students come back after a month and see how much they remembered curriculum. So that came out highly successful, and we ended up doing several more contracts, enterprise contracts. We ended up that actually generated more money than previous businesses like the VR arcade or like the the in-home games per the time that we spent on it. And so we ended up doing like a cybersecurity contract where we made this game that it's a shooter, and then the weapons you use are the cybersecurity tools. We did a VR therapy project where basically, as a therapist, you have a curriculum, you have exercises, a program that you give people. So translating that into VR and letting people do that at home in VR in their own safe space, and a VR music video and a VR fitness curriculum for a VR gym where we had a bike. The users would ride a bike for 20 minutes and then row like a row or elliptical for 20 minutes and then run on an elliptical for 20 minutes. And actually, for the fitness piece, another very interesting thing we learned is fitness is very effective in VR as well. If we take what we have today in fitness, you go to a gym, you go to a trainer, or you go to a class in a gym. It's gray, it's boring, it's sweaty, it's hot. You want to get out of there. In VR, you're in your own home. It's air conditioned. You're sitting on the machine, and the environment around you is absolutely beautiful. We put you in an autumn trail where you have autumn leaves falling down and animals and rabbits and things like that coming around, and you have the very relaxing birds chirping. And the feedback, the consistent feedback we've been getting back from that testing is that um, uh, wow, that didn't feel like an hour. That didn't feel like 20 minutes. That didn't feel like half an hour. And I wanted to stay in there. And we gave you a day and night cycle, a sunset. So it just all it did it we made workout not feel like workout when you do it in VR. So that was another very interesting thing we learned. And so that sort of leads us to sort of where we're at today, which is okay. So we can use VR as a tool to solve enterprise problems. One of the thoughts that came up maybe back in November of 2019 is, okay, so how do we do more of these? How do we meet more of these clients and do more of these projects? and so we can expand our team and hire more developers. Well, it turns out that when we looked at the data, we met most of these people through conferences that we held. We actually ended up holding 4 VR arcade conferences. The one in 2019 was sponsored by Microsoft. We did it as the Microsoft Reactor. And we were actually, just sort of a fun note, we were able to invite Alex Kipman, who's the inventor of the HoloLens and the Kinect, and sort of my boss when I was at Microsoft, to come and be our keynote speaker. So in a sense, that way, that story kind of came full circle from when I left Microsoft, and we sort of held a conference together last year. And a lot of the contracts we actually got out of those conferences. And so we thought to ourselves, so if we get contracts from conferences, can we hold more conferences to get more contracts? And how many do we need? And we calculated it, and the minimum we need is about like 4 conferences, 4 big conferences here to sort of get the minimum number of contracts that we wanted. And we're like, well, that's impossible. It takes like 5 to 6 months to organize a big conference like that. And so then we thought, well, why? Why does it take 5 to 6 months? Well, because of budget, because people have to fly out, because people have to get hotels, because it's a huge time commitment. And what can we do to get rid of all that? Virtual conferences, where we're standing here today. With a virtual conference, it doesn't take 5 to 6 months. We've since November, we've been holding meetups, and then since I think I forget when our first conference was. I think it was February. Yeah, it was February. Was our first conference, and we've been holding conferences every month. Instead of 5 to 6 months to organize, it's taken us 3 to 4 weeks. 3 to 4 weeks compared to 5 to 6 months to organize, to get the speakers, to get the attendees, to get the community partners, and ticket sales and everything. They're all paid conferences. And then for the attendees, it's basically as much commitment as scheduling a call. Here's a 15-minute call. You're going to be on a 15-minute panel. Here's a 30-minute call. You're going to be on a 30-minute presentation. And that's much easier. That's a much easier sell than saying, hey, I need you to fly out here for a week and pay for your hotels and pay for your own flight. And also you won't be able to be with your family. You won't be able to be at your office. You won't be able to work. So all of those things, all those problems, real enterprise, real life problems, get solved with a virtual conference. So that's sort of what leads us here to today. And our ability to sort of have this educational, informational, technical discussion here and sharing of information here today at this 42 meetup. So yeah, so that sort of brings our journey to today. I want to allow time to do Q&A, and I also want to allow time to do sort of like just break out into just talking to individuals after this. The last thing I wanted to mention before we go into Q&A is our project called Rayori. And we'll show a video of it in a second. Rayori is one of our passion projects that we've been working on for, oh gosh, like 2 or 3 years now. And it's sort of branched off of SciComm and then became Rayori. And Rayori is a Yu-Gi-Oh! Inspired VR card game. And this is sort of our like #1 most popular like game on Steam right now. It hit over 11,000 downloads a few weeks ago, which we're very proud of for a VR game. It's free on Steam, and we have a really amazing community. Probably what I'm most proud of is our community of players. We do PvP matchups every Saturday, and we do tournaments every few months. The last tournament, I think it was a $50 or $55 prize pool. You get to claim the title of Rayori, which means King of Kings, or sort of like a Latin, I don't know, neutral term for the winner. Yeah, so what we've been doing with this game is we're still on the lookout for recruiting new developers. We've actually been working with several developers from 42. Dylan in the back has been absolutely amazing in working with us. And actually, yeah, okay. Anyways, and Franz and Vincent and Mason, we've all talked to them and worked with them in some aspect before as well. So, if you're interested in working on a project, if you're interested in getting experience on something that's out on the store, that you have people playing every day and PvP every week, and that gets run in tournaments, um, we could always use help. And yeah, we could always use your help. So be very interested in talking about that if anybody is interested afterwards.